My name's Anna, and if you told me that my whole world would shift from just one party, I'd have laughed. Yet, here we are. It was at my college buddy Jenna's birthday bash that I first ran into David. He had this easy charm about him, you know, the kind that could light up a dull room. We got talking over drinks, found out we both had a thing for old school rock and indie films, and just clicked. Never thought I'd meet someone tonight who'd know more about Tarantino movies than me. He chuckled, handing me a drink. Yeah? Well, prepare to be amazed, buddy. I shot back, the conversation flowing easier than I expected. Before we knew it, hours had passed, and we were still wrapped up in our chat, oblivious to the party dying down around us. That night, something just felt right. David wasn't like the guys I usually met. He listened, really listened, and his laughs weren't just polite chuckles, but genuine bursts of amusement. It was refreshing. Within weeks of that first meet, we were pretty much inseparable, and moving in together seemed like a no-brainer. I had a cozy little house my grandparents left me, nothing fancy, but filled with warmth and memories. David loved it from the get-go. Life with David started off as a dream. We'd spend nights binge-watching series, cooking up exotic dishes we barely knew how to pronounce, and planning all the trips we'd take together. It was bliss until his mom, Evelyn, became a more constant presence in our lives. Evelyn was an interesting mix, always sweet when you spoke to her but fiercely independent. She had this air about her, like she'd seen it all and then some. The first time David introduced me, she gave me a smile that was both welcoming and measuring. "So, you're the girl who's stolen my son's heart," she said, her voice soft yet carrying a weight that made me slightly nervous. "Trying my best, Mrs. K," I responded, unsure how to read her. David had always been upfront about being close to his mom, and I respected that. But it was different, seeing it in action. He'd consult her on everything, from how we arranged the furniture to what we'd eat for dinner if she was around. It was a lot. "Mom knows best, Anna. You'll see, she's got a knack for these things," he'd say every time I raised an eyebrow at their dynamic. I tried not to let it bother me too much. After all, in every other way, David was the perfect partner, supportive, loving, and always making me laugh when I needed it the most. 2 years flew by in what felt like a blink, and David and I tied the knot. It was a simple ceremony, just family and close friends. Everyone said we looked like the perfect couple, and in that moment, I believed it too. We decided to stay in my house, the one I inherited from my grandparents. It had always felt like home to me, and David had fallen in love with its charm. Not long after our wedding, we found out I was pregnant. The news brought a new kind of joy to our lives, and when we shared it with Evelyn, her reaction was unexpectedly warm. "A grandchild, finally," Evelyn exclaimed, her usual reserved demeanor giving way to genuine excitement. "You'll see, children change everything." And change everything she did. Our daughter Lily was born on a chilly spring morning, her cries filling the room with the most beautiful sound either of us had ever heard. "She's perfect, Anna. Just perfect," David said, looking over at Lily with a kind of awe that melted my heart. The first few months were a whirlwind of diapers, late-night feedings, and more love than I thought possible. But as the dust settled and I tried to find a rhythm to our new life, I realized I was doing it almost entirely alone. Evelyn, despite her initial excitement, was conspicuously absent when it came to actual help. One afternoon, feeling overwhelmed, I called Evelyn, hoping she might want to spend some time with her granddaughter. "Evelyn, I was thinking, maybe you could come over and watch Lily for a few hours? Give me a chance to catch up on some sleep or run some errands?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "Oh, dear, I'd love to, but I'm just swamped this week." Evelyn's voice was apologetic, but I detected a note of dismissal that wasn't there before Lily's birth. "You're young, Anna. You'll figure it out." I did. I was taken aback, not just by her refusal, but by the implication that asking for help was a sign of weakness. When I told David about the conversation later, hoping for some support, his response only deepened my frustration. "Mom's right, Anna. She raised me mostly on her own, you know. We can manage, he said, not unkindly, but firmly. Yeah, but wouldn't it be nice to have some help? Your mom seemed so excited about Lily, I pressed, feeling the gap in our expectations widening. David shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes. She was excited about being a grandma, not a babysitter. We'll be fine, Anna. Really. I loved him, and I loved Lily more than life itself, but I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation that crept in with each passing day. I was a marketer by profession, valued at my job, relied upon for my skills and creativity. Yet at home, I felt increasingly like I was expected to be a superwoman, capable of managing everything without falter. Life with a toddler was a beautiful chaos, but after 3 years of sleepless nights and endless days, the walls of our home seemed to close in on me. I needed a change of scenery, badly. That's when I got the idea for a family vacation to Italy. David, what do you think about taking a trip to Italy this summer? I asked one evening as we were cleaning up after dinner. Lily was at my feet, playing with her toys, blissfully unaware of my growing wanderlust. Italy, huh? David looked up, surprised but intrigued. That sounds amazing, babe. Lily would love it too, her first big trip. Excitement bubbled inside me as I pulled up some travel blogs on my laptop, showing him pictures of the Amalfi Coast, Rome, and Venice. We could visit the beaches, see some historical sites, and just relax. It'd be good for us, don't you think? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. He agreed, his enthusiasm matching mine. But just as I was about to start looking into flights and accommodations, he added, "We should tell my mom about this. She hasn't been anywhere in years, remember?" The mention of Evelyn slightly dampened my spirits, not because I disliked her, but because I knew what her joining might imply for our vacation dynamics. Still, I nodded. Sure, let's tell her. She might enjoy it. The next day, we invited Evelyn over for coffee to break the news. As soon as we mentioned Italy, her face lit up, then just as quickly fell. Oh, Italy. I haven't been anywhere for so long. She sighed, a hint of sadness in her voice. David jumped in before I could say anything. Mom, why don't you come with us? It'd be great to have you along. Evelyn's eyes widened with delight, then she turned to me. Would that be all right with you, Anna? I don't want to impose. I mustered my warmest smile, despite the reservations churning in my stomach. Of course, Evelyn. It'd be lovely to have you join us. Evelyn hugged me, her gratitude genuine. Oh, thank you, dear. This means the world to me. Later that night, as I lay in bed browsing through hotel options, the reality of the costs began to sink in. A family room for 4 was significantly cheaper than separate accommodations, but it still stretched our budget. David, we might need to cut back on some of the outings to make this work financially, I murmured, showing him the figures on my screen. Don't worry, babe. You always figure things out, he replied, his tone reassuring yet absent, as if the details were just minor nuisances that would sort themselves out. I sighed, closing my laptop. Managing this trip was turning into a project, but the thought of seeing Italy, of watching Lily play on foreign beaches, kept my spirits up. I'd make it work, somehow. After all, wasn't that what I always did? One evening, I spread out all the travel brochures and budget sheets across the kitchen table, trying to make sense of our finances. David wandered in, grabbing a soda from the fridge. Looks like a command center in here, he joked, taking in the chaos of papers and maps. Feels like one too, I replied, not quite sharing his humor. I'm trying to figure out how we can afford the extra costs for your mom without skimping too much on our actual vacation. David popped the tab on his soda, taking a sip before responding. Well, she's really excited, Anna. Maybe we can just do fewer touristy things. Spend more time relaxing instead? I nodded, though the thought of cutting back on the experiences I had been dreaming of stung a bit. Yeah, maybe. Also, I need to sort out something for Evelyn's pets. She doesn't want to leave them alone. Oh, right. David said, his brow furrowing slightly. What's the plan? I'm thinking of asking Rachel to look after them. I'll have to see if she's available and willing to handle Evelyn's zoo, I said, only half joking. Later that week, I caught up with my friend Rachel at a local cafe to discuss the pet-sitting situation. Rachel had always been the go-to for favors like this, but I knew it was a big ask. So, I hate to be a pain, but I have a huge favor to ask, I started, stirring my coffee nervously. Rachel smiled, her easygoing nature a comfort. Shoot. What do you need? It's about the Italy trip. Evelyn's coming with us, and I need someone to take care of her puppy and 2 cats. Could you, maybe help out? I asked, hopeful, but feeling the imposition. Rachel paused, then nodded. Sure, I can do that. Just show me what needs to be done. How long are you guys gone? 2 weeks. And you'd be a lifesaver, really. Evelyn's pretty particular about her pets, I explained, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. No problem. I'll come by a few days before you leave, get the rundown. We'll make sure her little critters are well looked after, Rachel assured me, her tone confident. With the pet situation handled, I turned my attention back to the travel plans. I spent the next few days booking flights, arranging for the family room at the hotel, and tweaking our itinerary to fit the budget. Each evening, David would glance over my shoulder, offering a nod or a simple, looks good, before turning his attention back to whatever was on TV. The day before our departure, I checked and double-checked our luggage, ensuring we had everything needed for Lily and Evelyn. The stress was mounting, and I felt stretched thin. The trouble with my mother-in-law, Evelyn, began long before we even landed in Italy. It started right there on the plane. We were barely an hour into the flight when Evelyn's patience seemed to wear thin. Lily, my 3-year-old daughter, was a little restless. It was her first long flight after all. David, can't you keep her quiet? People are trying to rest. Evelyn hissed across the aisle to us, her voice laced with irritation. David looked at me, his face apologetic, but his response directed at soothing his mother rather than defending our daughter. Mom's right, Anna. Maybe get Lily to settle down a bit? I bit my lip, holding back my frustration as I tried to distract Lily with her favorite book. Lily, sweetie, let's look at your book, okay? The moment the plane touched down in Italy, a mixed wave of relief and excitement washed over me, despite the earlier tensions. We made it, despite the logistical nightmares, the long flight, and a fussy toddler. As we shuffled through the crowded airport, the reality of being in a new country began to sink in. Mama, look. Big planes! Lily exclaimed, pressing her tiny face against the terminal window, momentarily distracted from her previous crankiness. Yes, sweetheart, lots of big planes here, I replied, trying to muster as much enthusiasm as I felt drained after the overnight flight. We managed to gather our luggage and navigate to the shuttle that would take us to our hotel on the coast. The drive offered stunning views of rolling hills and the glistening Mediterranean Sea, which should have lightened the mood, but Evelyn seemed less than impressed. It's so hot here. And why is everything so dusty? Evelyn complained, fanning herself with one of the travel brochures. I exchanged a quick glance with David, hoping he'd help keep his mother's spirits up. Well, Mom, it's Italy in the summer. It's part of the charm, he said, trying to sound cheerful. When we finally arrived at the hotel, the beauty of the old building with its ivy-covered walls and panoramic sea views struck me. I hoped this would lift everyone's spirits. Here we are, I announced. Let's check in and get settled. The lobby was cool and inviting, a welcome respite from the heat. As we approached the front desk, I handled the check-in process, confirming our reservation for a family room. Evelyn peered over my shoulder as I spoke with the receptionist. Make sure we have separate rooms, Anna. I need my space, especially after that flight, she whispered harshly into my ear. I paused, taken aback by her tone. Evelyn, I booked a family suite. It's spacious, and I thought. I don't care what you thought. I told you I needed my own room, Evelyn interrupted, her voice stern. The receptionist, catching the tension, quickly interjected. I'm sorry, but we are fully booked at the moment. I can put you on a waiting list for a separate room, and we might have one available in a couple of days. Evelyn huffed, clearly not satisfied. Fine. I suppose I'll have to manage until then. We made our way to our suite, which was beautifully decorated and overlooked the sea. I thought it was perfect. Look at this view, Evelyn. It's not every day we get to see something like this. I tried to lighten the mood as we entered the room. Evelyn, however, was already inspecting the bedrooms, her displeasure evident. I guess it'll have to do. But I expect that separate room as soon as it's available, she stated, making no effort to hide her annoyance. Of course, Evelyn. I'll make sure of it, I assured her, feeling the tension rise. 2 days after we arrived in Italy, Evelyn finally moved into her own room. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking maybe now we could all enjoy a bit of what this vacation was supposed to offer. But the tension didn't dissipate as I'd hoped, it just shifted. The very next morning, at breakfast with all the hotel guests milling around, Evelyn dropped another bomb. Lily, stop calling me grandma in public. It makes me feel old. Just use my name, she said sharply, right in front of everyone. Lily looked at me, her big eyes filling with confusion and hurt. I was floored. Evelyn, she's just a child. She's excited to be with you. I tried to keep my voice even, but the sting of her words bit deep. Evelyn waved a dismissive hand. I'm here to relax, Anna, not to play the doting grandmother. You need to respect that. My frustration mounted, but before I could respond, David chimed in. Mom's right, Anna. Let's just keep things light. We're on holiday. His words felt like a betrayal. Not wanting to make a scene, I swallowed my anger and nodded, though inside, I was reeling. The next incident came a few days later. I woke up to find both David and Evelyn missing. Confused, I asked the receptionist, who informed me that they had rented a car and gone out for the day. They hadn't even bothered to tell me or invite us. When they returned in the evening, arms laden with shopping bags filled with high-end fashion and jewelry, the exclusion felt deliberate. They were chatting and laughing, caught up in their own little world. Look at this, Anna, isn't it gorgeous? Evelyn flaunted a new necklace, the price tag of which could have funded our entire family's meals for days. I bit my lip, forcing a smile. It's lovely, Evelyn. David then showed off some of his new clothes, completely oblivious to my growing dismay. Got some great stuff today. That's when I noticed the logos. This wasn't just any shopping spree, it was extravagance at its peak. Panic set in. David, how did you pay for all this? I asked, my voice tight. His face fell slightly. Oh, I used the joint account. It was easier. The joint account, our savings for emergencies and significant expenses, not luxury shopping. You used our savings to buy all this? My voice cracked, the betrayal hitting me like a physical blow. David's response was defensive. Why not? We're on vacation, Anna. Why can't we indulge a little? A little? I shot back, my temper flaring. You didn't think to discuss it with me first? And what about Lily and me? You didn't think to include us in your plans today, or even buy something small for your daughter? Evelyn, ever the ally to her son, interjected sharply. Oh, stop being so greedy, Anna. You're ruining the holiday with your nagging. Greedy? Nagging? The words stung, and I felt utterly isolated. From then on, David and Evelyn did their own thing, more shopping, fancy dinners, while Lily and I were left to make our own plans. That morning I woke up to an unusual silence, a cold, empty space where David usually slept. Frantically, I checked around, only to find his side of the room perfectly tidy, his belongings gone. My heart pounded as I raced to Evelyn's room, fearing the worst. The door swung open to an empty room, her bags missing, no signs of her ever being there. Panicking, I grabbed my phone and dialed David's number, then Evelyn's. No answer. Lily stirred in her bed, her sleepy eyes searching. Mommy, where's Daddy? Let's find him, sweetie. I tried to reassure her, masking the tremor in my voice. But as minutes turned into hours with no return calls, Lily's soft whimpers grew into desperate cries. I want Daddy. Just then, my phone rang. It was David. His voice was eerily calm, chillingly distant. We're at the airport, Anna. Mom needs to go home. She's tired of the vacation, tired of the constant complaints and... He paused, his words twisting the knife. Your greed. In the background, I could hear Evelyn's biting voice. She's ruined everything with her selfish ways. How could you? I gasped into the phone, my voice a blend of anger and heartbreak. How could you leave us here, in a foreign country? How could you choose her over your own daughter? David's reply was cold, final. My mother is the most important person to me. She needs me. You'll manage, you always do. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, numb, then turned to see Lily's tear-streaked face. Anger surged through me, not just for me, but for my little girl, abandoned by the person she adored. In that moment, a plan formed, born from the wreckage of our ruined vacation. I called Rachel, my friend back home taking care of Evelyn's pets. Through clenched teeth, I explained everything. Rachel, are you at Evelyn's house now? Yes, I'm just about to leave, she replied, her voice tinged with concern. Leave the pets out of the utility room. Open all the doors. Let's see how tidy Evelyn finds her home when she returns, I said, the words bitter, but strangely empowering. Are you sure? Rachel hesitated. Yes. Do it. Then don't go back tomorrow. She needs to see what it's like when someone she relies on lets her down, I insisted, the plan crystallizing with each word. Rachel did as I asked, freeing the energetic puppy and the curious cats into the pristine environment of Evelyn's house. We ended the call with a shared, dark chuckle, imagining the chaos that would greet Evelyn upon her return. The late afternoon sun was dipping below the horizon when my phone erupted with an angry call from David. His voice was livid, strained through exhaustion and frustration. Anna, we can't get into Mom's house. Your friend isn't answering her phone, and we're locked out. Our flight was delayed, we're tired and just want to get in. I could hear the fatigue in his voice, but my patience had worn thin. That sounds like a problem you'll have to sort out yourselves, David. I'm not your keeper. A few hours later, Evelyn herself called, her voice shrill and frantic. Anna, this house is a disaster. The puppy has destroyed everything. There's poop on my bed, my shoes are chewed up, and the furniture's torn apart. It stinks, and we can't even stay here. She was nearly hysterical, the background noise of David's futile attempts to calm her adding to the chaos. And to top it off, the rescue service won't let us in without the house documents, which, guess what, your little stunt got destroyed too, she continued, barely pausing to catch her breath. I responded with as much calm as I could muster. Evelyn, I am still on vacation. You need to handle this. Maybe check into a hotel for the night? She was furious. You expect us to go to a hotel? I want you to call your security company right now and get them to open your house. We're coming there. I stood firm, the edge in my voice sharp as a knife. No, Evelyn. I won't do that. You made your choice, and now you can deal with the consequences. A week later, I returned home, bracing myself for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. Sure enough, David and Evelyn were waiting at my doorstep, their faces stormy. You've crossed the line, Anna. I'm filing for divorce. David shouted before I even had a chance to set down my bags. I sighed, more relieved than upset. I was going to suggest the same thing, David. His anger faltered, replaced by a stunned silence. Evelyn tried to chime in, her words laced with venom. You're nothing without us, Anna. You'll regret this. Ignoring her, I turned to David. Pack your things. You need to leave. Now. The gravity of my words hung heavy in the air. David, finally seeing the resolve in my eyes, nodded slowly and went inside. Evelyn, her face a mask of rage, followed him without another word. They moved out that evening. The divorce proceedings were brief. David and I had little to contest, and it was clear we both wanted it over with. He went back to live with his mother, and that was that. Now, as I sit in the quiet of the home I fought to protect, I realize I've regained more than just my independence. I've reclaimed my peace, my dignity, and a life where I no longer have to compromise my happiness for someone else's selfishness.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.